Yeah, so what we've had so far is something we've been working through for a few releases now, trying to update our build stack to use ES-Build under the hood, and now we're throwing in Vite for development serving. So ng-serve now just works with Vite when you're opted into this new build stack. Things are a lot faster. We've been seeing some really great performance improvements there. One thing I do want to set some expectations with the community. A lot of people outside of Angular tend to use Vite as kind of an all-in-one build system, doing everything that they need to do for their particular app. For Angular, we're using it in a much more narrow context. We're using it specifically for a development server, and specifically using it in ng-serve. So we've got some. So with now, we're able to ship this and get the performance improvements out of that. One thing we're looking forward to in the future is being able to pre-bundle dependencies, so that we get even faster builds. We don't have to rebundle dependencies that are going to be the same every time.
Aquí ando viendo este evento acá.
We'll be looking forward to
Saludos.
performance going on.
And then for developers who use this, they have to opt in. This is not a change that they just get automatically. They have to opt into that.
For right now, yes, you have to opt in. There's instructions in the blog post, but it's just one little flag change is all you have to make to be able to opt in. There are a few known feature gaps that we're still working through, which is why it's still in developer preview, but we're very much excited for people to try it out. And we're hoping to graduate this to stable and eventually enable it by default sometime soon.
Fantastic, fantastic. All right, I got a question for Dylan before we go to our audience.
Ya pongo el audio un momento.
What type of errors will folks get with the mark input is required? I know it's a new feature. People have been wanting that for a long time. Check our GitHub. Lots of comments wanting that. So how's that going to work out for developers in practice?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, this is like a top issue on GitHub for a long time.
Confírmame si escuchan el audio, por favor.
Especially authors of component
Solo me dejan en ropa porque tenía mal la...
specifically check to see
Tenía
if
mal el
it
horario.
was present, and if it wasn't, then throw a runtime error. And sort of the big advantage of required inputs, the new required inputs API, is that this is now a static error. It catches that compile time for you. So you can imagine, like, if you're a component library author and say you are trying to provide like a date picker widget, right? Or let's say like a schedule viewer widget.
Esto es un evento de
You want to have that date provided as
algo medio quemarropa. Esto es un evento de Angular, de release de Angular.
This is going to be super useful for component library authors, but in general, it's something people have really been asking for.
Acaban de mencionar de...
I've certainly written way too many components that have to insert things ng on a date. I think it's very boilerplatey. You have to put the non-null assertion. I always just feel dirty when I do that.
Quiero que ahora sí se escucha bien. Perdón, a quemarropa esto. Ya, prueben, acabo de quitar el eco.
We're going to throw to our audience to see if we have any questions from our audience. Remember, put your questions in the chat. All right, Chaos Monster, one of our favorite friends from our live streams. If you don't watch the gaming live stream,
¿Todavía se escucha eco por ahí?
It's really awesome with Jeremy Elborn and myself. As Angular is the new resolver input block.
Todavía.
Can it be a sync?
Question.
Sure. Yeah, we'll get back to you on Twitter, so definitely add us. Let's get another question from the audience.
Ok, creo que ahí está.
All right, so are there plans to integrate forms and signals? Does unidirectional data flow get broken with this approach?
Hay un plan de integrar formularios con
We're going to have
señales.
some engineers who work directly on signals that can answer that more, but Dylan actually worked on reactive forms. Can you give us just a little bit of a preview of that, Dylan?
Yeah, so sort of our perspective on this, and without, getting too much into what we could possibly do in the future, because we certainly haven't decided anything in this direction yet. But we consider forms to be like a crucially important test case for really any framework or any reactivity system. We really want the forms experience to be amazing.
Están hablando de formularios,
So
quieren que los
obviously,
formularios sean
we're
geniales.
talking about how do signals impact the way developers are going to write their applications. We really need to sit down and think about what that's going to do to the forms experience. So I want to emphasize we haven't made any decisions yet for exactly what direction we're going to take forms, but definitely we expect signals to impact forms in some way.
Todavía no tienen nada de señales para formularios, pero dicen que las señales esperan que las señales lleguen a afectar la parte de los formularios.
All right. I'm completely new to Vite. What does Vite's history, purpose, and ultimate goal?
Soy totalmente nuevo en Vite.
And the
¿Qué
ultimate goal
incluye
for
Vite? O sea,
Angular.
¿cuál es la historia de Vite? ¿Cuál es el objetivo de Vite en
Long-term,
Angular?
what do you foresee is how Vite can play a part of the Angular story?
Yeah, so Vite, if you're not familiar with that particular term, Vite is a sort of combination build system development server that's been developed in open source. Most notably, kind of Evan Yu is behind it, notable for Vue contributions. And there's been a lot of momentum behind that, just a lot of some very, very good performance coming out of it, and it's really been kind of taking a lot of the web tooling by storm. And so we've been
Básicamente,
hoping to
Vite,
leverage that within Angular, and
a ver,
a lot of what
respuesta oficial.
the Angular CLI in particular is trying to accomplish is to sort of abstract over a lot of the tooling that's going on under the hood that a lot of developers don't necessarily want to deal with. You don't want to be messing with config files and things like that. And so one of our goals with this particular project is to be able to swap out our dev server implementation, put Vite in there, get performance improvements, get
Básicamente
additional benefits from that.
performance
And be able
en
to ship that
desarrollo.
directly to users, and you don't have to change anything. You don't necessarily need to deal with config files or awkward migrations or things like that. And that's
Básicamente
something
que
we're
todos,
trying to lead into over the next few versions and where we're going with it.
sí, básicamente lo que sabemos de Vite, de que ayuda es un bundler súper rápido,
Is sort of
y ahora ya lo podemos usar en
method of
Angular.
being able to inject changes from your application without having to reload the page. So you're able to maintain state, you're able to keep looking at what you're looking at and get a really awesome editor.
Eso es lo que estaba mencionando yo en una charla de ayer, de que queríamos ver eso de que se mantuviera el state.
Get faster builds, make things a lot better there. And then one of the next steps we're going to be looking at after that is going to see how we can improve the HMR story and how we can make your edit refresh experience even better than it is today.
So before we go to our next audience question, that is a great point that I'd love for us to highlight just a little bit about the HMR story. So right now, Angular does support HMR, but the support isn't as robust as we'd like.
HMR
But with
significa Hot Module Replacement o módulo de reemplazo de módulos en caliente.
Spend some time investigating to see how we can improve that story for the hot module replacement.
Están incluidos, mucho, por lo menos lo principal de esto está incluido en el curso de Angular. Tal vez hay que agregar una sección para agregar un par de cosas nuevas, de las cuales desconocía hasta que salió oficialmente, pero sí. En general, con las últimas secciones están basados en lo nuevo fuerte de Angular.
Framework itself is designed and being able to actually accept changes and replace your styles at runtime and update templates, which can be quite involved. So there's still a lot of work to be done there, and that's something that we're interested in exploring in the future.
Esto salió medio
solve that problem.
Esto salió medio quemarropa. ¿Ustedes están hablando del Hot Module Replacement?
Time for one more question.
Un momento.
Is Vite enabled by default, or do we need to do something to enjoy it? So I can actually answer this one because I am also a genius on the couch. So you're going to have to do a configuration change. Angular.json, update there to enable it. We have details.
Básicamente para activar Vite hay que hacer una configuración en angular.json.
Check out the blog post, and we'll put that in the chat so you can know where the blog post is, so you can get the answers that you're looking for. All right.
No está habilitado por defecto.
Actually, I'm just hearing from offstage. We have one more question. Let's go do one more audience question. All right. I was super excited for Vite and ESBuild, but unfortunately, I require the localization to be supported. Any insights on the roadmap for 16.2?
Yes, internationalization is probably the biggest feature gap that we have right now.
Básicamente no se puede utilizar, según la pregunta que está, no se puede utilizar la localización en Vite ahorita.
I don't want to commit to any specific release because these things are always a little bit flexible, but it is definitely something we're going to be doing and something that
está en la mesa, pero todavía no esperan que eso esté disponible.
Definitely something to
todavía no.
Try out, even just for your default builds that aren't internationalization. Play with it today. See what those performance improvements are going to be, and then as we start landing in those last few features to shore up that compatibility, that's what we can.
Posiblemente para los GraphQL eso es algo que haremos después, un curso específico de Angular con GraphQL.
Tell the audience one feature that you want them to try out from the V16 release.
Yeah, so I'm going to toot my own horn a little bit here. I've been working for a while on automatic imports in the language service. So if you're using VS Code and you have our extension installed, or if you've installed our language service extension in another editor of your choice, and you're importing a component, especially a standalone component, from elsewhere in your application, try mousing over it, click Quick Fix, and see if it generates the import for you.
All right, Doug, 5 seconds to give us one feature.
Una característica que quieran probar.
That's a great one to start with.
¿Que recomiendan probar?
Say up front. One other thing I'll point out is that we are adding experimental jest support right now. Just
Experimental
to try
jest.
to explore new unit testing options, and that's something the community's been asking for a long time. Still very early right now, but something we're going to be continuing to push on in the future. So
Eso está genial, de ya poder trabajar directamente con Jest.
Definitely try out the new features in the Angular language service and try out that Jest support.
Está incluido HZZZ, está incluido en el curso de Angular, las últimas secciones que están siendo actualizadas hoy.
Okay. We know that you love standalone APIs and
Está actualizado y se metió secciones completas con señales y otras funcionalidades de Angular 16.
Hi everyone, I'm Minko from the Angular team, and I'm here to share the latest on standalone APIs. Back in 2022, we announced our plans to introduce a set of standalone APIs that would improve developer ergonomics, reduce the amount of boilerplates, and move Angular development forward. Since then, we've heard from the community that you all love the improved developer experience. We're thrilled to have unlocked so much potential for Angular features.
Vamos a ver.
In this video, I'll share with you everything
Se puede
about the
usar Jest en la versión
improvements
12,
in the
solo que hay que
routing
configurarlo.
APIs we introduced in version 15 and all the tooling that we landed in version 16. Before the introduction of standalone APIs, lazy loading routes was a multi-step process which relied on modules. Consider this example. We have a child module which declares the items route. In the routes array, we use the load children syntax to import the items module which contains the corresponding routes. This seems like too much code and too much work to lazy load routes, and while we agree, let's check out the new and improved lazy loading syntax in version 15. With standalone APIs, we can simply declare an array of routes and use load children with a dynamic import to lazily load the child routes. Later, we can pass the routes array to provide router or just export it if these are child routes. That's it. No more modules. No for child. That's just way less complexity, and it is way more immediately clear what this code does.
Está interesante.
There's actually one more feature that we would like to highlight. Check this out. Remember, there was no direct way to lazy load components. The only way to achieve this was through load children. Well, thanks to standalone APIs, we can now dynamically lazy load a component by using the loads component property on the route definition.
Eso también está
In this
en el
example,
curso,
the items component is lazy loaded,
solo que aquí,
and the code is much clearer.
solo que lo cambiaron porque ahora ya no es necesario apuntar al módulo del standalone component.
Angular-standalone-routing. So what's new for the standalone APIs in version 16? We made improvements to the tooling story. Now developers can create apps bootstrapped with the new standalone APIs using the standalone flag with ng-new. With this change, you will no longer need to manually convert your applications after creating them. Alright, but what about our existing apps? Great question. We have something for you too. We're also announcing new schematics that will allow teams to migrate their applications from ng-module-based to standalone APIs. By running ng-generate at angular/core.
Saludos a los que están llegando por ahí. Esto salió medio a quemarropa, pero la verdad no estaba esperando. Es que no estoy como en incertidumbre de muchas cosas que andan pasando por acá.
This will also assist you through removing unnecessary ng modules and even converting your app to Bootstrap using standalone APIs. You can even choose to migrate specific parts of your application by specifying a path to the migration tool. To get started, check out the migration guide at angular.io/guide/standalone-migration. You can use this tooling today to start taking advantage of all that standalone APIs have to offer.
All right, friends, welcome back. Standalone APIs keep getting better and better. And here to tell us more from the Angular team, Alex Rickabaugh. Alex, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Parece que vamos a seguir hablando de standalone components.
Yeah, it's so good to have you. I got a question for you right out the gate. We want to get started. And then I've already been told that the audience has a ton of questions. So we want to get going. All right, let's do it. But first, the migration story for standalone components has been on everyone's mind for a while. Please let us know what's the best way from your point of view for a team to migrate?
¿Cuál es la mejor opción para un equipo para migrar standalone
Right off the bat,
components?
if you're starting to think about using standalone components in your application, you should start authoring new standalone components. Don't necessarily jump into the migration if you haven't used them before, if you're not sure how
Dice
they work.
que no salten en
Get familiar with them,
migración,
try
o
them
sea,
out
en
in
las
a couple
migraciones de
cases.
standalone components y
And
primero
when
no
you feel
lo
comfortable
han
with the
utilizado
APIs,
antes.
That's when you want to start running the migration schematic. And if you have a big application, take it slow. Migrate a part at a time.
Así que
As
se lo
Nico
tomen
mentioned, you can
tranquilo, que
migrate a
migren una
specific
parte a la
path.
vez.
And then when you're ready to say, okay, I'm comfortable with this, it seems to be working, then you can use the kind of options that were shown at the beginning to migrate the whole application, kind of the rest of the application to standalone.
I love that advice for people to start using standalone APIs. Get used to them, start to make sure they fit your use case. I mean, there's still going to be a great way to go to develop a component.
Yeah.
Always a good way to go. But I think not having any experience, because it changes the way that you write your code a little bit, because you're removing the need for those modules. Yeah, so that's a really good tip. I think the community is going to really benefit from that. All right, speaking of community, let's go straight to a question. I know you
All
folks
right.
have a bunch of questions, so let's get started. All right, so will it be possible to lazy load components without defining them in the
¿Será
router?
posible cargar componentes
Without
sin
defining
definirlos
the
en el
router,
router?
yeah, you can lazy load standalone components today.
Sí.
We have, JavaScript has ES6 dynamic import, which is the import that you call as a function. And today you can do that in Angular with a standalone component, pass it to view container ref, and render it dynamically. No router needed.
That sounds fancy, Alex. I feel like, okay, so I love that description of what to do. I think you and I should do a video or something to let people see how
Yeah.
to do that in practice. I think some of these cool practices around standalone components, there's some opportunities there. We should do more of that.
Let's do it.
And if you want to see us do more of that, let us know what type of videos you want us to see. If you want to see Alex on the streams more, want to see other people, let's definitely do that.
probar
Speaking
eso.
of, let's get involved with more
Vamos a ver.
questions. Now, if I import a module
importo
into some
Un
component,
módulo en un
which are used
componente.
in a parent component, is the module imported many times in the parent component, or is there some caching involved under the hood?
There's
Vamos a ver.
not necessarily caching, but deduplication. So ng modules serve two roles. They kind of communicate which components and directives are available in
Un
templates,
momento, déjame escuchar bien.
and they configure dependency injection. And it's one of the things that makes new developers kind of a little more confused when they're working with ng modules, because they're actually doing these two kind of separate but somewhat related jobs. And so when you
Right.
import an ng module into a standalone component, from the dependency injection side, it's deduplicated into the application injector. So it only is referenced once. From
¿Tiene
a
duplicidad?
template side,
Se
it's
pasa por
compiled away
referencia.
by the compiler.
Fantastic. I had a question for you,
No,
actually.
no se duplica,
What's
básicamente.
next for standalone APIs?
What's next for standalone APIs? So v16 has ng-new --standalone. You can start using standalone in an application. One of the things we're doing right now is working with our community to make sure that ng-add, when you're adding a new library like ngrx to Angular, works with standalone applications and standalone APIs. So once we kind of get that piece in place, then we'll start to visit, like, should standalone actually be the default
Sí,
experience for a new Angular application?
Desafortunadamente creo que no se puede
That makes
poner
a lot of sense. And I know that
subtítulos
for
y si
some
pongo los
developers,
subtítulos
doing the ng-add
no
requires
se
a
va,
little
no
bit
se
of
va a
a
ver,
workaround
no se va a ver,
that
pero
you have to do
básicamente
manually,
están hablando de
and we just
standalone
wanna speed all
components,
those.
standalone
Sure.
APIs.
Yeah, the key is you can use standalone in components and directives, but it's migrating your bootstrap to standalone that has a little bit of problems with ng-add, because obviously community libraries were written before this existed.
Right.
They're not looking for that bootstrap application call, they're looking for an app module.
Right.
So we're working with them to make sure their schematics are compatible.
Oh, fantastic. I think we have time for one more question from the community.
Sí. Vamos a ver.
All right. Can I combine load component with load children to lazy load module and
Se pueden combinar lazy load,
Yes, you
no
can
load
do that.
component, lazy
So
children, load children.
loads the kind of loads
Sí,
routes, right?
sí,
It loads
sí.
child routes of the
Dice
current
que sí se
route.
puede usar.
Load component will load the component that's being shown, kind of for
Sí,
that.
estos eventos, este evento era
So
necesario,
if
creo
your
yo.
load component
Disculpa que esto no,
has a
no fue
router
programado, pero es
it
que
will
la verdad es
respect
que
the
aquí en
load
adelante
children and also lazy load the
por
child
lo menos hasta que no nazca mi hija, no puedo programar nada así como específicamente, pues todo va a ser, no puedo prometerles que voy a estar aquí todo el día. Perdón por
Yeah,
haber
a
salido
lot
esto
of
así como a
thought
quemar
and
ropa.
kind of, effort goes into making sure
Y
that
se me
you have
adelantó
a
como
clear,
una hora.
consistent story for how these APIs work.
That's right. And I think we're going to talk more about that later on for the fireside chat with you and Matt Liner. So definitely people want to stick around for that. And so friends, if you want to see more of Alex, stick around to the
Está
end.
preguntando a la
Alex will
audiencia
be
que
back
si
to
quieren
talk
ver
about
más
more features,
a este tipo de
especially
app.
one that I know people have been thinking about. So you definitely want to stay tuned. Thank you, Alex, for coming out. It's so great to have you. Now, again, we'll be hanging out with Alex a lot more today. But up next, we've heard that some of you have dry components. And we want to make sure that you know about the future of server-side rendering and hydration in Angular. So you want it, you got it. Take it away, Jessica.
Bien, server-side rendering de Angular ahorita.
Hey everyone, I'm Jessica Janik from the Angular team, and I'm here with some very exciting news about the future of Angular's server-side technology plans.
A ver.
Up till this point, Angular applications that rely on server-side rendering have faced a major challenge: hydration. We've used a solution called destructive hydration, which means that the app is rendered on the server side and then re-rendered from scratch again in the browser. Not ideal, right? Of course, there has to be a better way. And we think so too.
Vamos a ver.
The team and I have been working on implementing a non-destructive hydration.
En el lado del servidor van a implementar están implementando una nueva forma de hidratación. Hidratación es una forma de pasar código de JavaScript desde el lado del servidor al
meaning that the apps will be rendered on the server side, sent to the browser, and Angular will try to match and reuse as much of your app structure as it can instead of re-rendering it like before. Applications will have improved core web vitals and be able to take advantage of all the benefits of server-side rendered applications. Oh, and I have something even more excellent to share with you. I'm pleased to announce that the first developer preview of this feature is available now in the latest release, Angular v16. That's right, developers can update their apps and start experimenting with this feature.
Bueno, así que hay que probarlo.
Since this is a developer preview,
Nuevamente es un developer preview
still be changed, as well as various implementation improvements
que todavía no lo usan para producción, porque esto puede cambiar, esa API.
Here's a sneak peek at what's on the horizon. We'll be working on stabilizing the APIs, working on support for internationalization, and exploring fancy features like more granular hydration. We're so excited about this new update and can't wait to hear what you think and see the great apps you'll build. Live long and prosper, and stay hydrated, friends.
All right, I have a question for you. Would you call that a wave of innovation? All right, I know, dad jokes for the win. All right, so to tell us more about the new hydration features, please welcome Jessica Janik and Andrew Kushner from the Angular team. Jessica, Andrew, welcome to the show. How are you folks doing today?
Doing great. How are you doing, Mark?
Oh, I'm
Está bonito el pin que tiene el man de Angular.
It's so good to have you. Listen, the people are so excited. If you have questions for Andrew and Jessica, please put them in the chat. This is your time to speak with the great folks who worked on this great feature. All right, here's my question to start off for you folks. We've already had server-side rendering with Angular Universal.
Ya tenemos
How is what we're doing now with
server-side rendering con Angular Universal. ¿Qué es lo?
Angular Universal is kind of
¿Cuál es la
a
diferencia?
separate project that was brought into the Angular ecosystem. It was originally created by a community member. And hydration is something that's part of the core of
Es
the
que
framework.
hydration es parte del core de Angular.
Server-side rendering that's handled
Angular
by
Universal
Universal,
está hecho por la comunidad.
And the core of the framework does all this annotation work to make it so that it can be reused on the client side.
All right, fantastic. Question for you, Andrew. So working on this, what were some of the challenges that the team had to overcome figuring out how to implement
¿Cuáles son
hydration
uno
for
de los retos
Angular?
que ellos se enfrentaron para poder implementar esto en Angular?
method of rendering application after server-side rendering was not very optimal, and it allowed some different patterns. And our goal was to find the right balance between supporting some of the patterns.
Básicamente lo que están buscando es tratar de básicamente implementarlo de una manera más sencilla. Generalmente lo que está diciendo por acá.
So early on, I remember talking with you folks about what your vision was for hydration in general, and how you wanted to work with the other community members and other projects in the space. Can you just speak a little bit about what the implementation means for them as well?
So we definitely did work with like other community members and volunteers that wanted to help test the framework and the new hydration changes along with us so that we could make
Esto
sure
de hydration de Angular se va a hacer hasta
we were able to catch some
que
of those
ven,
issues earlier on. That was a big
al
help
son
for
bien,
us
todo
in
bien.
actually getting
Esto de
us to the
hydration que está hablando
results
básicamente es
without
del lado del
that
servidor,
help, we would not have been able
renderización del
to
lado del servidor
build
propiamente con
deliver it,
en el
and
corazón
have it be
de Angular, sin usar
And also one point that
Universal,
I'll make is
Angular
that,
Universal,
we also
pero
learned a lot from the people that we worked with, and huge
pero
thanks to
todavía
everyone
está en early stage, está en la fase
And what we
inicial.
learned also is that,
Entonces esto habría que esperar a que lo,
migration or like the enabling of hydration
hasta que se tenga,
may not be like one step.
o sea, hasta que se tenga un
but
release
can be
oficial, pues dice que
made
el API puede
incremental, so we
cambiar.
provided a way to adopt the hydration incrementally for applications.
Con la
So
parte de Next estoy esperando para que se termine, que tengamos Turbo Pack habilitado ya en producción.
So this is also,
Pero
was a feature that we
posiblemente
based
está en la
on
mesa esa
Oh, fantastic.
esa
All
versión
right, we
13
gotta go
de
to some
Next.
questions from the audience. They are burning up with questions. All right, so there is the new hydration. Is this just for SSR?
Esta nueva
or
hidratación
is
es solo para
this also
servidor
on
o
the
funcionará
client?
también en el lado del
This person
cliente.
saying they don't know as much about hydration. So where does this fit in their developer story right now?
So this is not just SSR, but it works in conjunction with SSR. So you have an application that you are server-side rendering, and what hydration essentially is once that server-side rendered application is serialized and passed down to the client, the browser picks up, and then Angular kicks in, and hydration is actually like Angular reattaching and reusing all of the DOM structure that's there, rather than what we did before, which is to kind of wipe away what's there and re-render after the application.
Básicamente es la hidratación es
The answer is that they're used together, both server and client together.
funcionan en conjunto cliente y servidor, pero básicamente la hidratación es una forma de retomar lo que el servidor renderizó de Angular, se lo manda al cliente y luego retomarlo del lado del cliente.
On the server, which should be on the browser?
So I can maybe answer that. So if I understand correctly, the question is it possible to render
¿Qué pasa con lo que no se renderizó del lado del servidor que tiene que ser dado al cliente? Pues,
I think, yeah, we have this flag that I mentioned, the skip hydration flag. So with that flag, it's possible to recreate the component on the client. And if there are some use cases or missing capabilities,
hay
we'd
unas,
love to see the feature request.
aparentemente hay unas banderas que se puede decir qué componentes ustedes quieren que puedan ser hidratados o no, básicamente.
Fantastic. Question for both of you.
Ya el curso de Udemy
What's
está
next for
regrabado.
hydration? Where we're going?
Well, there's a lot coming up in the future.
Y
As far as
todas las
the
últimas
server-side
secciones se grabaron en Angular
rendering is
16.
concerned, we're going to be exploring concepts around like partial spaces where we can potentially have sections of the page that are left dehydrated until we want them to be hydrated. So we're going to research that a bit. We're also looking at like lazy loading as more of a like fine-grained lazy loading built into the framework. That's something we're also going to be researching. And these things will probably work in conjunction together, but we have a lot of like research to do on it before we can make any promises. But we're very excited about the potential of what that brings.
And one thing that I want to mention is that the architecture that we put in place would allow us to do this research, and actually we did some research during the initial phase of the exploration. So we do have some interesting experiments, but we, as Jessica mentioned, we want to do a little bit more research, make sure that we
No parecen programadores,
the best solution possible with the best quality possible. So
pero sí lo son.
you'll hear more from us.
Yo creo que sí va a quedar grabado, pues. Va a
And
quedar,
I'll add that, of course, we also want
que hacer un par de ediciones. Nuevamente esto salió medio a quemarropa.
Mm-hmm. All right, more questions from the community. Someone says they're waiting for the next pun from Jessica.
Well, I mean, there's a pool of them I can pick from. We've got all this talk about hydration. What can I say?
All right, let's get one more question.
Vamos a esperar
One more
mucho de
question from the
hydration
community.
por parte de ella.
All right. Well, actually, we're out of time for questions, but we'll come back to more questions. And listen, if your question didn't get answered during this, be sure to tag us on Twitter, and then we will try to get back to you as soon as possible. Jessica's also a person who comes on the stream. Maybe we'll have Jessica
En Twitter
and Andrew
van a
come on,
estar
and we'll
más
do a whole
respuestas
segment
de las que están
dedicated
preguntando a la
to
comunidad,
hydration.
que se
So big
pongan más
thank
por
you
ahí.
to Jessica and Andrew for stopping by. Thank you so much. All right, friends, this is your signal to put your questions in the chat because we're about to learn all about Angular's new reactivity model, Angular Signals. Take it away.
Viene la parte de las señales del evento de Angular.
Hi, I'm Emma,
Dios,
a
esta
senior
parte suena
developer
durísima para mí.
relations engineer on the Angular team. Today, I'm here to share some fantastic news about Angular and the future of change detection. Change detection is how Angular updates the UI in the browser when the state in the app
Esto es lo que se
changes.
usa para cuando
This could be
Angular
from
usa
user
para detectar los
interaction,
cambios y
or maybe
sincronizar
some new data is available.
el HTML con el
Making
componente.
something happen when there's a change is called reactivity. Angular's reactivity today runs change detection all over your whole application. But what if we were to rethink reactivity in Angular? Well, that's exactly what we've been doing. Before we move on, let's discuss reactivity. So what is reactivity? What if Angular knew more about which state in your application was changing and when it changed? Even better, what if your state could tell Angular itself where it's used and when it changes? So Angular could automatically update whatever depends on that value. With this level of fine-grained control, we believe that application developers can build scalable, performant applications while taking advantage of the features and tooling they love from Angular. With these goals in mind, we found a solution that we think developers and their teams will love. Introducing Angular
No me gusta
Signals.
como lo dijo porque
You might have
hace
come
ver como
across
que ellos lo
information
inventaron,
about
pero
our
no es
plans
cierto.
to update Angular to use signals. So we have another surprise for you. Angular Signals are in developer preview in version 16 today. We cannot wait for you to try them out. To help you get started, let's cover a few of the foundational concepts together. Signals have three core concepts that we call reactive primitives: signal, computed, and effect. A signal is like a variable and holds a
Saludos,
value
Sebas.
that can change. Unlike variables, signals can notify Angular when they change. A computed is a kind of signal that calculates its value from other signals.
Sí, nadie reclamó la
and
patente,
only
¿verdad?
updates if the values it depends on change. Then we have effects. Effects are functions that execute when the values of the signals they use change.
Esto
Giving
también está puesto ya
developers
en la hoja de
the opportunity
atajos
to
de
respond
Angular que
to
se
those
desplegó.
changes in a meaningful way. All right, now that we have the fundamental concepts covered, the next step is for you to get started and try it yourselves.
No creo que la API de las señales vaya a cambiar.
You can get started by heading
O sea,
to
cuando sean estables en la
goo.gle
siguiente versión. O sea, ahorita están en preview, en la siguiente versión ya se van a usar
All right,
en-
that's it for
en-
me,
como
and for you, that's
para
your
para
signal
producción.
to NG update. Bye.
¿Cuándo va a sacar las señales? Eso es una buena pregunta en React.
Okay, can I be honest? This is one of my favorite Angular features yet, and I love that the community is so excited about it. Now, I've already been told that you put your signal questions in the chat, so we're definitely going to answer them live. Joining me on the couch are Alex and Emma from the Angular team, and welcome, friends. Welcome back, Alex. Again, Emma, good to see you. As always,
Computed
welcome
como
to the show.
view. Sí, esto viene de
Yeah, good. You know what?
todo el mundo se copió la
It's so
tarea
good to be with
con
everybody,
esto de las
especially
señales.
being a distributed
Todo el mundo se
team,
la
being
copió
able to spend
solid.
time with people face to face. It's just so good. All right, we're not gonna get to any of my questions because the people have already lit up the chat with Signals questions. So we're just gonna
Todavía
jump
no
right in.
es
All right,
SR
jumping right
o
into
Angular
the
Universal.
community questions.
Eso es algo
In terms
que
of
he estado
performance,
pensando hacer
is there a
independientemente.
net advantage of using only signals instead of the regular way, the change detection?
Si hay en performance, hay alguna mejora solo usar señales en lugar de la forma tradicional.
Signals will drive on-push components in the same way that observables can with the async pipe. And that means that you can use signals to get the same performance benefits that you do if you make your components on-push and use observables. In the future, we will have kind of what we're calling per component change detection or granular change detection.
En el futuro
And
vamos a
that
tener
means
algo.
that whenever a signal component becomes dirty,
Vamos a ver.
whenever a signal notifies that component that it's updated, the component needs to refresh itself with the UI, only that component can be refreshed and the rest of the application won't have to be. So you'll get some performance benefits from that as well.
Right, because
Básicamente, en un futuro se va a tener algo
developer
granular.
at this point, right?
Ahorita no hay un beneficio así como directo, pero en un futuro cercano se va a tener una... Angular va a poder detectar qué cambió basado en señales, básicamente. Pura vida.
Fantastic. You mentioned the RFC. We had a massive RFC, 5 documents that we put out there. Did we have any key learnings that we could talk about from the RFC?
Yeah, absolutely. There's actually an entire 6th RFC that just summarizes all of the learnings from the
Pues
previous 5.
si acabas de hacer la aplicación, yo recomendaría que trates de hacerla la última versión. Entre más actualizado esté en el inicio de un proyecto, más va a durar esa última versión. Y antes de que sea algo más complicado y difícil de actualizar.
Alex, do you have other learnings maybe?
Yeah, even the team couldn't keep straight what from observable meant.
Sí, en la industria muchos usan Angular, muchas empresas usan Angular. Yo diría que más que todo por el estándar de desarrollo de Angular.
Signal components, we realized that we were going to be removing a number of the lifecycle hooks that just didn't make sense for signals.
Sí, yo también creo eso, JM. Ya tiene que sacar las señales. Ya.
So as part of that, we
que Angular le ganara la carrera
a
React.
We have this after init thing in a constructor.
Es interesante.
And we got a very clear signal from the community that this was not an API design that they liked. And so we said, you know what, we don't have to.
Cuando React lo implemente, como lo he dicho muchas veces, cuando React lo implemente va a ser muy parecido a Solid.js.
Got a comment from the community?
Y a Quick y todos los demás.
All right, so this was actually a question. Does the Angular signals mean that all reactive data that we want to be rendered to the DOM have to be provided in signals?
Dice que si todo tiene que ser...
Saving it in traditional variables.
Tiene que ser, si ahora todo lo nuevo tiene que ser en señales o en lugar de la forma tradicional.
That's a great question. It depends.
Dice que depende.
If you are still using Zone.js in your applications, you will still be able to have zone components and they can bind to state that is just in services and plain variables.
Lo puedes hacer.
If you want to use the new zoneless change detection,
que si quieres usarlo sin el zoneless, significa que no va a usar la librería de Zone.js. Entonces,
it doesn't mean that every individual piece of information has to be in its own signal.
Dice que no todo tiene que ser
an application that just has one signal of your entire state, and for many small applications that will suffice. It's kind of up to you at what level of granularity.
Dice que es a nivel, o sea que es determinado bajo el desarrollador a qué nivel van a llegar.
On any given change.
Yeah, I might be reading this question wrong, and I'm sure Dennis can also add this in
Signals,
the chat, but I also think
RxJS.
that signals allow you to pick out what.
Tengo un video de comparativa de Signals versus RxJS en YouTube. Se ve claramente que Signals tiene una ventaja en ciertas cosas, especialmente con los behavior subjects y observables. Mucho más sencillo con señales y más rápido, y va a funcionar más rápido Angular con Signals. Pero RxJS es parte de Angular.
That's a great point. But then that gives us the fine grain because we get to choose now versus just having variables that are in the zone and then we bind them to the template, just everything there.
No serían variables, serían propiedades de clases.
Yes, right. All right, another question from the community. All right, can signals be used outside the component, like in a service or a guard? Good question.
Great question, and absolutely, you can put them anywhere.
Y los puedes, sí, básicamente le dice que si las señales se pueden usar en cualquier lugar, dice que sí, servicios o cards.
Just to clarify for the people, they're part of the framework, but they're not only used for change detection anymore.
Son parte del framework las señales, pero no solo para el change detection.
Signals are how you communicate to Angular that your state, that the state you want to show in your UI is changing. And that state can still, like in Angular today, it can still live anywhere. You can put that state in services, you can
y se puede poner el
put
state
it
en servicios, en componentes,
you can put that state in global variables if
como
that's your thing.
variables globales, si esa es
It doesn't matter,
si eso es lo que
as
te
long
gusta.
as you
Dice que,
bind in a component,
dice que no importa dónde lo pongas.
Angular will be able to know that
Angular va a poder saber
when that signal changes.
So you're telling
cuando
me
la
I can
señal
have
cambia.
a signal that I change in the service and it can communicate.
La voz de Fernando es como la voz de Morgan Freeman, ya quisiera yo.
I'm not being sarcastic, I'm just saying that's like fantastic.
No me dio COVID
I think we have time for
todavía.
one more question. All right. So how do you plan to help migrate legacy
¿Cómo piensa migrar
Zone.js
Legacy
libraries
Zone?
and applications to full signal-based component applications?
Esa es una buena pregunta.
That's a great question.
Sí. O sea,
Migration is something that we have not spent a lot of time looking at yet. It is very challenging.
básicamente lo que está preguntando este tipo es si se puede desechar completamente Zone.js para usar 100% el poder de las señales, que eso es algo.
In some cases, we can very clearly say, oh, you're assigning to this field here. We can maybe in an automatic migration turn that into a signal. In other cases, when you have state that's off in services and injecting
esto es algo.
it's a bit more challenging to do that
Le
automatically.
está dando una vuelta a algo que yo sabía que esto iba a pasar, porque sin Zone.js no teníamos el ciclo de detección de cambios de Angular, pero podríamos hacerlo, sin Zone.js podríamos hacerlo con señales. Pero si quitamos Zone.js, ahorita Angular tendría un breaking change tan fuerte que nadie quisiera usar Angular 16. Pero estamos en un punto donde Angular va a poder detectar qué cosas va a ocupar Zone.js, qué otras cosas no.
We did work with a lot of state management library authors and library authors and owners who we know will want to provide a signal-based alternative or additional operability.
¿Qué preguntaría yo?
And so we've been working with them from the start, basically, to make sure that we have operability in mind, that we have.
Básicamente a mí me preguntaría cuál es el futuro del ciclo de detección de cambios para la versión 18, 19 de Angular, hacia un futuro más lejano, si ellos pretenden destruir o hacer este cambio de no usar definitivamente nada de Zone.js en su framework.
And that's a good point too. Obviously, I spent a lot of time working on.
Qué bueno, Andrés, me alegro mucho de que hayas logrado eso.
Good enough experience that you want to migrate. But you will not have to.
Dice que
we're not removing Zone.js.
Es lo que decía, sí. No estamos removiendo Zone.js. Pueden pasarse a señales si quieren, es opcional.
Which means that there is, unless something changes in the ecosystem, we don't see removing Zone support at all.
Dice que no están pensando en remover Zone.
Need to migrate Zone components, but I hope you want to.
Dice que esperan que ojalá se pasen, pero no están pensando en removerlo. Sí, esto es.
Long days with zones, but early days with signals. And the RFCs let you know that we're still trying to decide what's the best way to move forward and what we're going to do next. So,
sí, están hablando de cuál va a ser la mejor forma de seguir adelante o de moverse hacia adelante.
We're talking to library authors, we're working with people who use Angular as a part of their story. So this is something that is going over time. Speaking of time, our time is up together right now. But thank you so much to Emma.
Gracias, Javier, por las palabras. Saludos hasta Honduras.
Now, right now, I'd love to just hear some audience comments to see what the streets are saying about this. Oh, listen, Marcus, thank you so much for sending the love out there. Marcus and I share a strong bond, having a very similar name. That's pretty fantastic. NG16 is the most amazing release ever. The team hears that type of feedback, and it just energizes us, and it lets us know that we're doing the right work, which is so encouraging. So we really appreciate that. And then let's do one more comment. Signal. That's right. Right. Mm-hmm. All right. And okay, one more. Marcus, comment. Happy Angular 16, everyone. And that goes out to the
Aquí yo he visto mucho en Python y C#.
All right, so let's change it up a bit, shall we? The Angular team has been shipping features left and right, and people have been wondering, well, what's next? Well, you're in luck. To help us understand what's next for Angular and more, please welcome our engineering manager, Madlina, and Alex once again.
Alex como que programó todo, ¿verdad?
So that's pretty fantastic.
Oh, thanks for having me back.
Yeah.
Sí, definitivamente con signals y sockets se puede hacer, porque básicamente habría que se puede crear un efecto que esté escuchando el socket.
Put your questions in the chat. This is a great time to get questions answered that you'll get to hear from our leadership, and you'll get some really good answers from this. Very excited. All right, I'm going to open up. Now, we had talked about hydration and signals.
Hemos estado hablando sobre hidratación y señales.
Figure out that these two features out of everything that we could have been doing. How do we land on these two features that are big things for 2023?
It's a good question, and it's one we get asked a lot. It is also one that we've been talking about in various forums. You'll hear a little bit more at I.O. You've heard about it maybe at NGConf or other places.
Saludos hasta Argentina.
At the heart of it
Luciano, gracias por tus
comes down
palabras.
to the fact that we are a data-driven team. And so we want to look at the data from the developers in various forms, whether or not that's comments, your bug reports, issue reports, RFC comments.
Esto de la hidratación, que básicamente es SSR para Angular nativo, es algo interesante. En lugar de pasarlo por Universal. Hay que probarlo, eso tengo que probarlo.
Probably more importantly, what is not working. Because that's usually where we then need to spend our time. And that's how we've sort of gotten into this area. And in particular, beyond, like one of them with hydration, it was very much the fact that we heard that server-side needs some love. And we need to spend a little bit more time making it better. With reactivity, it came from a little bit of a different place, partially looking at issues and all of those places, but also the fact that we knew we had to look at developer experience a little bit more. And one of those avenues was the fact that
ya Nicolás me está hablando como si fuera Chuck Norris.
How Angular worked in order to get your effects that you wanted in your app. And that is not a great experience. That's not how a framework is meant to work. And what we've internally been calling that is sharp edges.
Aquí lo que estoy pensando a ver, ¿cómo sería la comunicación de componentes a través de servicios? Es exacto. Ahorita están hablando lo mismo. Esa comunicación entre señales y componentes, de alguna manera, si ustedes tienen un servicio, inyectan el servicio y el servicio puede leer la señal y es reactivo, mucho mejor que tradicional manera de hacerse. O puedes pasar el valor de la señal al componente y el componente recibirlo, o el valor de la señal, puedes recibir la señal, puedes recibir el valor primitivo y luego con ese valor transformarlo y crear una señal. Se puede hacer muchas cosas, básicamente como quieras. Todo sigue funcionando igual que antes. Tú tienes un componente que está esperando un string y le mandas el valor de una señal, recibe el valor de la señal, no reactivo. Puede decir que quieres recibir la señal. O recibes el valor primitivo, el string, y en el componente mediante el @input recibes la propiedad y puedes establecerle el valor a una señal o hacer un computed basado en el input. Hay muchas maneras de hacerlo. Computed signal, digámosle, para que no nos confundamos ahí. Las señales hacen programación reactiva, eso no es lo mismo que ya hacía. Es parecido, no es lo mismo, pero es parecido. Puedes ver el video comparativo que tengo de RxJS versus las señales y vas a ver una gran diferencia. Solo que el RxJS permite hacer más cosas como operadores, como un flujo que puedes hacer como operadores. Pero muchas veces cuando tienes un behavior subject es muy similar a una señal. En el momento que tú haces esa conversión lo transformas en un observable y deja de ser un behavior subject. La señal no. Son similares pero diferentes en muchos aspectos.
Is there a core that we can put in there in place of Zone.js that will support Angular for the next 10 years of development, that will smooth over these sharp edges and make it so that developers can focus on shipping their features and not necessarily fine-tuning their performance in the way they had to do before?
Básicamente lo que están hablando es que los desarrolladores en Angular pueden enfocarse en liberar features en lugar de mejorar el performance manualmente. Podría, sí, eso, Osner sería algo similar a eso, sí, un behavior con el pipe async en el HTML, sí. Algo similar sería eso. Pero si tú tienes, si usaras ese behavior subject en 3 lugares en el HTML, hay 3 suscripciones. En cambio, si usaras la misma señal en 3 lugares del HTML, solo es el valor de la señal. No hay 3 suscripciones.
Or comments. I guess we get both. Okay, so what I would like to know is how can developers contribute to the code for example, input or output or pipes for Angular itself? The source code looks overwhelming. Are there any tutorials?
Sí, ¿cómo la comunidad puede ayudar a contribuir a Angular? Sí.
What's the best way to contribute? How can they
¿Cómo es la mejor forma de contribuir a Angular?
So on our issue tracker, we have labels for the issues. And there's 2 labels I think that are relevant here, which is good first issue and help wanted. These are issues that we've kind of singled out and triaged as, hey, someone who really doesn't know too much about the internals of Angular can come in here and start to maybe get their feet wet.
Dice que si lo que quieren es, pueden buscar las etiquetas de
Definitely reach out
Help
to us if
Wanted
you're
en
interested in
los
working
issues
on an issue. Give us
de
an
repositorio de
issue and
GitHub
ask,
de
hey, can you
Angular
take this on?
y pueden empezar a
Can
trabajar
someone
por
help
ahí.
me understand what needs to happen here? And if it's, you know, there are many areas of the framework where we don't have the bandwidth to focus on right now.
Sure.
We're working on reactivity and hydration at the moment, right? We're not necessarily doing deep work in the animations package today. But if it's something that fits in with our plans, if we have the bandwidth to kind of engage with you and help you understand what needs to happen there, we will do that. Okay?
I definitely want to emphasize start small.
Yeah.
Right. Like things are overwhelming if you haven't had a chance to get to learn it, and so this is why we've done the work of singling out issues as being good places to start needing help, because those are places where you can start.
Ok, vamos a ver la pregunta aquí. Si React implementa, bueno, la pregunta que pone Carlos, si React implementara Signal, ¿quién sería mejor Angular o React para desarrollar aplicaciones? Eso sería indiferente. Sería indiferente, Carlos, porque es como que digas que es, o sea, porque de nuevo voy al lado de Solid. Solid es básicamente React con señales. Básicamente. Lo que va a pasar cuando todos implementen señales o cuando React, Angular, todo el mundo usa señales, las aplicaciones van a ser mucho más rápidas y fáciles de mantener. Solo es el concepto de la señal, comprenderlo es un paso más.
How supportive they are, even for internal, external people. So, friends, if you're out there and you want to contribute, we're very supportive. We welcome the support from you as in your contribution. We're really, really happy.
Confirman de que ya terminaron toda la migración de Udemy en Angular.
Front-end development, I learned HTML and CSS, and I'm at the end of JavaScript. Do you advise me to start to learn Angular, and why?
Definitely. I think there is no reason. You've got all the prerequisites to get started going now.
Se me dicen que ya en Udemy ya tenemos el curso completo de Angular. La regrabación completa ya está todo en live.
And go through it myself, all of the steps yet, but that is a great way to get to know Angular in there as well. And we do assume some amount of knowledge of HTML and JavaScript, but it sounds like you've got all the prerequisites.
Dev containers, a menos de que yo realmente esté haciendo algo que necesita ser ejecutado en Linux o dependiendo de la aplicación, pero usualmente no trabajo en Dev containers, a menos de que sea estrictamente necesario. Prefiero tenerlo el proyecto y luego generar las imágenes. Pero depende de ciertas cosas. Me ha tocado hacer Dev containers. Sí. Está difícil de que React pierda terreno, a menos de que, o sea, hay que ver qué pasa con esto de Solid, Quick, Angular con señales, todo el mundo con señales, hay que esperar. Pero de nuevo, cuando React suelte las señales va a ser un boom, va a ser un boom igual de grande o más grande que esto de Angular con señales.
So many questions from the community, let's keep going. More community questions. Okay, so is there a possibility of Angular compilation support to single file? Brandon Roberts, I know you first off. I know you.
We know you.
Yeah. So single file compilation with tools like V. Is there anything on our roadmap? Anything we're thinking about?
Dice que si hay una posibilidad de una compilación.
Single file compilation is a goal of Angular in the future. This is something
de que tengamos una compilación de un solo archivo.
Not everyone may know what that even means. What is single file compilation?
Dice que ¿qué es file compilation?
To compile your Angular code, right? Let's say you have your component in let's call it like component module, and you have your component file. Angular needs both of these things to be able to compile your application, to be able to compile that component. And it's more than that. Actually, if you're importing common module, it needs the definition for common module to do that, which means compilation kind of has to happen as this waterfall process where you compile the library and then you compile the application on top of the library.
Dice que
and you have to compile all of the files.
Básicamente que está hablando del detalle de cómo funciona la compilación de Angular.
Means that you can take the source code for one file, not knowing anything else about your application, and produce compiled output for that file. And that's nice because you can parallelize it. Right? So you can have builds that take advantage of multi-core processors and run, compile 15 files simultaneously.
Está en la, básicamente dice que tengas la posibilidad de solo tomar un archivo, compilarlo y tener un producto para montar. Pero eso está en el roadmap, pero no está en esta versión.
And so as much as we'd love to do everything, we want to make sure that
El curso de Angular avanzado todavía no está en la última versión. No. Posiblemente vaya a ser un nuevo curso de Angular avanzado en el cual el 100% del curso va a estar basado en señales. Y como decían por aquí, son less JS, o sea, si son JS.
And sure, the approach we've taken there is there are some fundamental assumptions that we make in Angular about how things work, like ng modules.
Sí, en DevTalles tenemos, como dice por ahí nuestro compañero de DevTalles, tenemos el curso íntegro como está originalmente en DevTalles, en el caso de que tú quieras todavía volver a ver cómo estaban esas secciones sin señales. En Udemy tuvimos que reemplazarlo completamente para que no fuera un curso nuevo que tuvieran que
Standalone is a great example of that. Standalone components take us a step closer to single file compilation.
Fantastic. I want to touch on something that Lina brought up about the importance of us picking projects and completing them. What learnings can you draw from or share with the community that led to our stance on it to be sure that that's kind of a focus for us moving forward?
I guess for me personally, it wasn't. I don't think that is just an Angular specific thing. I think it's a good software engineering.
Vamos a ver aquí un par de preguntas que tenemos en el chat nosotros. Svelte, sí, Svelte va creciendo definitivamente. Ahorita hay que ver qué pasa con Svelte, con Quick, porque Quick está haciendo mucho ruido. Sí, Angular se mantiene, especialmente en la industria. En empresas Angular se mantiene. Mucha gente prefiere en empresas trabajar con Angular. Se puede usar Signal R en lugar de socket. Se pueden usar señales para sockets, sí, parte del objetivo es ese. Sería más como computer o efectos, pero para ver dependiendo de lo que quieras poner ahí. Pero la parte de computer y efectos trabajan con señales propiamente. O el efecto para ejecutar como el init state, por ejemplo, el init state, el engine init. El curso de Angular en Udemy es el mismo, o sea, si tenías el curso anterior de Udemy, automáticamente ya vas a ver los nuevos videos. Así que si Angular podría hablar un poco de lo que pasa con microfrontend, la arquitectura de microfrontend.
I think what we've learned is that there's a lot of different versions out there, but also that there isn't a consensus yet on where it might go. And for us, it is important whatever path we pick. If we build something into the into Angular itself, we always want to make sure it is a thing we can support for the long term. And so that's why we're doing a very careful approach here on what to do and what not to do.
Básicamente dicen que lo que sea que hagan tienen que hacerlo con mucho cuidado porque lo que quieren hacer que lo que se implemente en Angular se le dé un soporte por mucho tiempo.
It's easy to technology is often not the silver bullet for a lot of things that go on in an application, and so microfrontend solves some problems, but it doesn't solve everything you might have going on. I've actually seen somewhere
¿Es Angular más preferido con backends que tengan? Angular es agnóstico al backend, no importa lo que sea que tengas en el backend. Hay que dar mucha discreción de quién vaya a ser el backend.
What are you trying to solve, and what are all the ways you're going to have to prepare yourself for that, and where are you trying to go with that? And so it is often a little bit not.
Sí, es importante. Esta versión 16 es importante, sobre todo que haya tanta cosita así como feature nuevo es importante. El curso de Udemy ya está regrabado y toda la parte final está con Angular 16 y sockets. Sockets y señales. Y efectos y computer properties. Hay ciertas cosas que posiblemente voy a tener que añadir. Posiblemente lo voy a añadir después o van a ser parte del curso avanzado de Angular.
Yes, actually that's a really good one. We've talked a lot with, I remember a lot of conversations on signals as well, was like, can we predict what problems we're introducing? We know which ones we're solving. Do we know what
Posiblemente, casi todo lo que quiero hacer ahora, quiero implementarlo con mínimo el domain driven design para que sea fácil pasarse a otra arquitectura. Me confirman de que ya está migrado todo.
you guys ask us what's happening, we can tell you now. Soon means when it's done. All right, let's get another question from the community. Should we expect rendering model of Angular to have core changes deriving from the introduction signals?
Ooh, that depends what you mean by rendering model. The reactivity model, certainly, right? We're introducing a new one with signals. We're not planning any changes to how rendering works directly.
Dicen que no tienen planeado hacer ningún cambio así
Yeah, and actually Ivy is one of the things that enables us to do this.
en el renderizado, el modelo de renderizado de Angular.
So we can introduce things like signal components and not add additional code to zone applications that aren't using it yet. But we're not planning on any major changes to how templates are created just yet.
Que no hay ningún,
There's some interesting ideas that we're benchmarking and playing around with there. But
que no hay nada así como para
projects down the line.
hacer ese cambio así
We'll also
debido a la
probably
introducción de
see how
señales.
signals actually end up working out.
Yo creo que ese cambio que está mencionando se va a ver como viéndolo como un futuro en la versión. Obviamente no lo van a querer decir, pero en la versión 17, digámosle, van a introducirlo como se puede optar por salirse de Son.js, que eso sería lo ideal, de que fuera como opcional. Y luego ya la versión 18 de Angular, ya pues digamos que más a la fuerza podría ser una versión donde tú puedas decir lo que quieres hacerlo como antes o quieres hacerlo puramente con señales y puedas tener aplicaciones más pequeñas y rápidas con señales que con la forma tradicional. Parcialmente, el curso está todo el curso se regrabó, o sea, todas las primeras secciones están en la versión 15 y las últimas están en la versión 16.
Another community question. If we're building a new app from ground up, is there a reason to use a mixture of ng modules and standalone, or should we just go fully standalone?
Es una buena pregunta.
Standalone.
There's no reason to do a mixture if you're starting new.
Fantastic. Next
ng
one.
new dash standalone.
There you go.
Esa es una buena pregunta. Dice que si se va a crear una nueva aplicación, ellos recomiendan si lo trabajamos con standalone components o creamos, o sea, lo hacemos basado en módulos o lo hacemos todo en standalone y pues recomendaron eso en standalone. Eso está interesante. La parte de los standalone components también está incluida en el curso. Y el uso la mezcla de standalone components con los módulos. Son desarrolladores del core de Angular, los que están ahí.
If we're building a new app, we did that one. Let's see, is there any more? Do you suggest to name a component? All right, so this is the thing. Okay, I'm not going to give my opinion. I'll just tell you. Do you suggest the name of a component like with card component or just card with the introduction of standalone components? Do we need to change our best name practices? The reason I said
Hay un cambio
we recently did a live stream.
En el nombre si lo pasamos en standalone components.
Like mark component or door component. Jeremy likes door. So settle the debate. Is it door component or door?
I would do door CMP, so.
We have a third contender.
Okay. All right. So then it sounds like it's best left up to the development team.
It probably depends on what else you do. What do you do with your services? What do you do with your business logic? Where if is there other naming conventions you have that you want to fit in? So I would say the most important thing is make sure it fits in with the rest of what you have. And so if you generally end up designating things as components or you end up having things in folders, whatever structure you might have for your personal project.
Pues básicamente están diciendo de que depende de ustedes. Si quieren ponerle card component al standalone component o ponerle card component.
Let's do one more and then we'll wrap up here. Do we have plans to add native store for state management in Angular? Okay, I get it. Something like we have in NGRX. Do we have plans for something like that?
Ooh, that's a great question. Yeah, I think it remains to be seen.
Yeah.
So we're talking with a number of the community library stakeholders. So NGRX, NGXS, RX Angular, State Adapt, and we're engaging with them to figure out what are some good patterns around state management. Where I think we're not settled right now is like, where does this slider live between what the community supports and encourages in different patterns, so like
no hay nada planeado.
Than NGXS. How much of that do we leave up to the community versus how much do we say, okay, everybody seems to be doing this one thing in a very similar way. It makes sense to put this part of the core framework.
Oh, good.
Así que ellos están en contacto con diferentes autores de la comunidad, de otras librerías para manejo de estado y que evalúan o van a evaluar si todos ellos hacen algo en común para ver si eso termina siendo parte del core de Angular.
Alright, so are there any plans to be able to render static pages at build time with lifecycle methods like Next.js to make SEO and social media link sharing easier for static portions of the sites without the need of SSR? That's a chunky question.
The chunky question, it's probably not been the area we focused on the most. Angular is at the heart of it a reactive framework, and we focused on making it easy to build reactive applications. That doesn't mean it's not something we shouldn't be considering more on whether or not we should be.
Pues básicamente están diciendo que no.
It's just not on the most immediate part of our.
Está diciendo que no en una forma elegante.
Reactive applications.
Pero cuando ya tengan la parte de hidratación, lo más probable es que eso ya vaya a ser posible.
Right. Fantastic. All right, friends. Well, here on the Angular team, we are extremely grateful for you folks out there being a part of our vibrant and thriving Angular community. A big thank you to Matt, Lina, Alex, the whole team who spent time hanging out with us today and just being here. Now, this stream is coming to an end, but this is not the end for you. Now, if you're new to Angular, we just launched a brand new course on the Angular YouTube channel that'll help you build your first Angular app, and we hope that you will enjoy it. Be sure to NG update to get the latest version of Angular for your next project. And from all of us here on the Angular team, thank you and go build great apps. We'll catch you in the next one.
Bueno, la verdad esperaba un poco más de este
Hey there, friends. It's Mark from the Angular team back again and bringing you the latest updates from the Angular v16 launch. Angular's momentum is real, and we've been hard at work creating the best developer experience possible for you, the fantastic
soy el único delgado. No sé por qué no engordo.
We have a lot of features to discuss, so let's get to it. First up, I hope your components are thirsty because the team has just released a developer preview for non-destructive hydration with server-side rendering. That's right. Long gone are the days of your Angular apps having to re-render the server-rendered DOM when your app gets to the browser. With this feature being in developer preview, you can try it right now. Here's how. For standalone apps, add a call to provide client hydration to the providers list in the Bootstrap application configuration. And if you are using NG modules, add a call to provide client hydration to the providers list in the app's main module. Remember, this is a developer preview and there will be some features we haven't implemented just yet. Be sure to check out the release notes and Angular release blog for more details. Links in the description of this video. Next, let's discuss recent updates to Angular's reactivity model.
Sí, ahorita está en un beta propio, pero puedes hacerlo con Universal.
We found that at scale, it isn't the optimal solution. Now, we spent a lot of time trying to figure out a better way. And you know what? We think we found one. Angular Signals. If you haven't heard of Signals before, that's totally fine because we got you covered. Signals have three core concepts that we call reactive primitives: signal, computed, and effect. A signal is like a variable and holds a value that can change. Unlike variables, signals can notify Angular when they change. A computed is a kind of signal that calculates its value from other signals and only updates if the value it depends on change. Then we have effects. Effects are functions that execute when the values of the signals they use change. And this gives developers the opportunity to respond to changes in a meaningful way. And now, the biggest question: when can we use them? Right now. We just launched in developer preview, and we're going to link some helpful docs and Q&As with the developers where you can find more information. And remember, as with all developer previews, things are likely to change over time as we continue building out this feature set. Remember last year when we introduced standalone APIs for components, directives, and pipes, allowing developers to have optional modules, and everybody loved it? Well, get ready to love it more because we're introducing some
Esta presentación, así que estoy viendo así en el fondo, se parece a mis primeros videos de Angular, la presentación que hacía sobre ese triangulito así en la esquina.
Say hello to the new standalone migration schematics. Now you can migrate your applications all at once or bypass
Prácticamente aquí con lo del standalone
to
migration
get started, run
están
ng
empujando
generate
fuerte de que
at
todo sea
Angular
basado en
/
standalone y
core
dejar los
colon
módulos.
standalone in your project. But we didn't stop there. You can now generate applications that are configured to use standalone APIs from the start. That's right. No need to manually convert your app code to bootstrapping a component and removing modules. It's all handled for you with the new standalone command line option for ng-new. Routing is a vital part
Eso
of
está
nearly
interesante.
every
Hay
app
que
out
hacer
there. So,
esas pruebas. Por
we've
eso
decided
esto
to
es
make it
parte
a
como
bit
del
better for
avanzado.
everyone.
Lo pienso yo más
You've
así.
asked to
porque
be able to bind parameters to a component's inputs.
no se
All
puede
right,
cambiar así
you
nada
got
más.
it. In V16, you can
El
now
curso, pues,
define
no le
properties
dejaría
that
de
map the
servir a
inputs
personas que
in the
están
resolve configuration
que lo
for
usan
your
para la
routes.
industria.
You can pass resolver and data properties, path parameters, and even query parameters. Very cool stuff.
Eso sí está súper
Let's turn our
interesante.
attention to updates around developer tooling. We have a crisp new developer preview of our ESBuild-based build system. Furthermore, we're using Vite for the development server of ng-serve. Now, this is only for dev servers. To enable Vite in ESBuild, head over to angular.json to configure this feature. We'll include instructions in the description to this video. Surveys and community feedback tell us that Jest support is high on the wish list for Angular devs. Well, today we're happy to announce that we're enabling experimental support for Jest in V16.
Eso
Details on how you can try out this
nuevamente
new
voy a
experimental
esperar
feature
a que eso ya
can
esté
be found in
habilitado
the links
porque
in the description.
Jest
Here's another
es mi
feature
testing
that we've
library por
received
defecto.
a
O sea, la
lot
que
of
más me gusta, la
requests
que he
for.
utilizado
The
por más
community
tiempo.
has been asking
Y
for
eso es
required inputs for a while,
súper.
and we are happy to announce that components now support required inputs.
Esto
To
también
mark
está
an
explicado
input as
en
required, add the
curso.
required flag to the input decorators configuration.
Para que ustedes
and
puedan
you are
usar esto,
ready
por
to
cierto,
use
tienen que
this new
actualizar
feature.
las DevTools
Okay,
de
honestly, there are too
VS
many
Code, si lo
features
usan
to
ahí.
cover in just this update, so it's time for a lightning round. By default, new projects will start with fewer files, and we've added a schematic to generate your environments file if you need it. The Angular language service can now autocomplete imports in templates. The ng undestroyed lifecycle hook is now injectable, and it provides you with more flexibility in registering cleanup logic for your app. And while Angular has always been compatible with the vast majority of content security policy settings, we've just added stricter style source CSP support across our packages to allow developers to specify a nonce attribute for component styles that Angular
Esto básicamente es lo que está
And can you
haciendo
believe that
Solid
there
y
are
Quick
even
con la
more
importación de
updates
estilos
in this
inline.
release? To learn more, check out the official Angular release blog at goo.gle/Angular-V16.
No, mucho de
All
lo
right,
que
everyone, Angular V16 is
A
out
ver.
now with some fantastic updates that we think you are really going to love.
Sí,
Be sure to
definitivamente.
NG update today to take advantage of all of these great features.
Definitivamente
Thanks for
hay
watching,
mucho
and go
interesante de
build
Angular.
great apps.
Bueno, voy a dejar esto hasta aquí porque no he almorzado. A todas las personas que estuvieron ahí, pues se ve, o sea, la versión 16 de Angular. Déjenme cambiar esta toma por acá. Lo que sería esta. De hecho, tuve que reutilizar esa pantalla de ahí. Está la cámara, sí. La reutilicé. Esto fue medio a quemarropa porque de nuevo... primero se me adelantó una hora esto. Segundo, no puedo planificar nada hasta que no nazca Elizabeth, que es mi hija, que puede ser en cualquier momento que nazca. Por eso estoy como así a la incertidumbre. Por suerte no nació mientras estamos en este live. Nuevamente, todas las personas que estaban viendo ahí, gracias por estar ahí pendientes. Sí queremos hacer algo en la parte de Angular avanzado, porque hay muchas cosas que van a cambiar cómo se va a desarrollar Angular mañana, y obviamente pues van ciertas cosas. La barba me la corté hoy. De ayer a hoy me la corté. Lo de la hidratación tengo que probarla. Tengo que probar eso. Eso va a ser algo que definitivamente la gente del equipo de Angular Universal va a sacarle mayor provecho, pero todavía está en Technical Preview, ¿no? Igual las señales están en Developer Preview. Es decir, pueden cambiar en un futuro, cosa que dudo. Yo no creo que vayan a cambiar. Este es el teclado por defecto que viene en Mac y esto es un Razer. Estos son los que uso. Bueno, gente, leo aquí rápidamente a ver si hay otra pregunta. Bueno, gracias a todos los que están ahí. Cuídense mucho. Espero poder verlos más adelante en otro video, en otra transmisión que podamos hacer. Disculpen que esto fue nuevamente a quemarropa. No es mi intención hacer estas cosas así. Pero de nuevo, se hace lo mejor que se puede con el tiempo que se tiene. Cuídense y nos vemos en el próximo video, la próxima transmisión. Y sí, ahora me quedé súper rápido. Cuídense, nos vemos.